The 70s, humanity's strangest experiment. Welcome, primitive thinkers. It is I, Melvin of Soralunia, here to test your knowledge of the 1970s once again. The decade when humans played with mood rings, blamed everything on astrology, and survived on a steady diet of pop rocks, tab, and whatever those jello monstrosities were supposed to be. This quiz covers the entire disco-drenched spectrum: world events, tech leaps, political messes, bizarre lifestyle trends, and gadgets that should never have left the lab. So, step onto the trivia dance floor, and try not to embarrass yourselves. Remember, in the 70s, even your appliances smoked. Let's get to it. Level 1. Don't worry, these questions have no sharp edges. Which band was famous for their painted faces and stage personas, like the Demon and the Star Child? Kiss. Who played the lead character Mary Richards in a popular 1970s sitcom set in a TV newsroom? Mary Tyler Moore. What dance fad involved two partners bumping hips to the beat of the music? The Bump. What Pontiac car model featured a massive, screaming chicken decal on the hood? Firebird Trans Am. Which ABBA hit, released in 1976, is often called the greatest pop song ever written? Dancing Queen. What kitchen appliance became affordable and common in the 70s, revolutionizing how leftovers were heated? The microwave oven. Who played the character Han Solo in the 1977 film Star Wars? Harrison Ford. Which daredevil gained worldwide fame in the 1970s for his motorcycle jumps over buses and canyons? Evel Knievel. What London clothing shop, run by Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood, became the centre of the punk movement? Sex. What 1977 album by Meatloaf became one of the best-selling albums of all time? Bat Out of Hell. What 1974 Mel Brooks Western spoof features a famous scene with cowboys eating beans around a campfire? Blazing Saddles. What 1978 TV miniseries starring Meryl Streep and James Woods depicted events of World War II? Holocaust. What was the name of the musical family group that travelled in a multicolored bus on a hit TV show from 1970 to 1974? The Partridge Family. Who was the lead singer of the new wave band Blondie? Debbie Harry. What 1970s trend involved people gathering at rinks to skate to disco music? Roller disco. Which 1970s craft craze involved baking sheets of plastic in an oven to create hard, miniature ornaments? Shrinky Dinks. Which 1970s sitcom about a family in a Chicago housing project was a spin-off of Maude? Good Times. Who became the drummer and lyricist for the band Rush in 1974? Neil Peart. What fashion trend involved wearing a matching jacket and trousers made of polyester, often with wide lapels? The leisure suit. What 1978 comic strip creation by Jim Davis features a lasagna-loving orange cat? Garfield. Solid work! Even your bell-bottoms just swished with pride. What kind of deep pile carpet was a staple of 1970s home decor? Shag carpet. What jewelry item, introduced in 1975, supposedly changed color based on the wearer's emotions? The mood ring. Which 1979 film was the first Star Trek theatrical release? Star Trek, the motion picture. Who was the first person executed in the US after the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1977? Gary Gilmore. What 1971 Marvin Gaye concept album focused on the environment, war, and poverty? What's going on? Welcome to Level 2. Adjust your bell-bottoms and try not to trip. What company released the Betamax videocassette recording standard in 1975? Sony. Who replaced Peter Gabriel as the lead singer of the progressive rock band Genesis in 1975? Phil Collins. In 1975, which Teamsters union leader mysteriously disappeared from the Marchus Red Fox restaurant in Michigan? Jimmy Hoffa. Which sitcom featured a dry cleaning mogul moving his family to a deluxe apartment in the sky? The Jeffersons. What band released the polished jazz rock album Aja in 1977? Steely Dan. Which comic actor directed the 1974 horror spoof Young Frankenstein? Mel Brooks. In 1973, the US Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade legalized what medical procedure? Abortion. What tabletop role-playing game was first published by Tactical Studies Rules, Inc. in 1974? Dungeons and Dragons. Who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979 for her work with the poor in India? Mother Teresa. What was the make and model of the red car with the white stripe, driven by Starsky and Hutch? Ford Gran Torino. Which Apollo mission, launching in December 1972, was the final mission to land humans on the moon? Apollo 17. What famous disco nightclub in New York City was known for its celebrity guest list and strict door policy? Studio 54. Who played the character Ellen Ripley in the 1979 film Alien? Sigourney Weaver. What was the name of the first Apple computer released in 1976 in a wooden case? Apple I. Which US city went bankrupt in 1975 and was famously denied a federal bailout by President Ford? New York City. Home gaming exploded with an early console famous for titles like Pong. Which system was it? Atari 2600. Which country controversially defeated the US in the 1972 Olympic men's basketball final? The Soviet Union. Who became the first Polish pope in history in 1978? Pope John Paul II. Who directed the surreal 1977 cult film Eraserhead? David Lynch. What US president signed the Emergency Highway Energy Conservation Act, lowering the speed limit to 55 miles per hour? Richard Nixon. Which two reporters from the Washington Post broke the Watergate story? Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. The breakout star of the 1972 Olympics wowed the world with daring gymnast routines. Name her. Olga Korbut. What was the name of the third and final boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in 1975? The Thriller in Manila. The Back to the Land movement inspired many to join shared households. What lifestyle trend was this part of? Communal living/communes. Which Douglas Adams radio series, later a book, premiered on BBC Radio 4 in 1978? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now entering Level 3. Only geniuses and delusional optimists proceed. Who wrote the 1977 best-selling novel The Thornbirds? Colleen McCullough. What medical imaging technology was invented by Raymond Damadian, with the first human scan performed in 1977? MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. Who was the unknown comic on The Gong Show who performed while wearing a paper bag over his head? Murray Langston. What colossal earthwork sculpture was completed by Robert Smithson in the Great Salt Lake in 1970? Spiral jetty. What storage medium, introduced by IBM in 1971, became the standard for data transfer? The 8-inch floppy disk. What 1973 comet was touted as the comet of the century, but proved disappointing to viewers? Comet Kohoutek. Wrong! You're thinking like someone who inhaled too much aerosol. What 1975 daily newspaper headline famously read, "Ford to City, drop dead"? New York Daily News, regarding the bailout denied to NYC. Who was the Democratic candidate defeated by Richard Nixon in the 1972 presidential landslide? George McGovern. A 1974 military coup brought down Haile Selassie. Where did it happen? Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. What funk collective was led by George Clinton and known for the Mothership? Parliament Funkadelic, aka P-Funk. Which serial killer, known as the Killer Clown, was arrested in 1978 after murdering at least 33 young men? John Wayne Gacy. What 1972 dam failure in West Virginia killed 125 people and injured over 1,000? The Buffalo Creek flood. What was the name of the Khmer Rouge's notorious security prison and torture center in Phnom Penh? S-21 in Tuol Sleng. In 1972, which company introduced the HP-35, the first handheld scientific calculator? Hewlett-Packard. What 1973 Mike Oldfield album was the first release on Richard Branson's Virgin Records? Tubular Bells. In the 1973 Battle of the Sexes tennis match, whom did Billie Jean King defeat? Bobby Riggs. Which Soviet director released the sci-fi masterpieces Solaris, 1972, and Stalker, 1979? Andrei Tarkovsky. Which horse won the Triple Crown in 1978, the last to do so until 2015? Affirmed. Who won the Masters Golf Tournament by a record-tying 8 strokes in 1976? Raymond Floyd. What 1979 software became the first killer app for personal computers, driving sales of the Apple II? VisiCalc. What proposed amendment to the US Constitution regarding women's rights failed ratification in the late 70s? the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA. What 1974 revolution in Portugal overthrew the authoritarian Estado Novo regime? The Carnation Revolution. What 1972 wide-body jetliner suffered from a cargo door design flaw that caused the crash of Turkish Airlines Flight 981? McDonnell Douglas DC-10. What specific type of bacteria caused a deadly outbreak at an American Legion convention in Philadelphia in 1976? Legionella pneumophila. Who was the US Attorney General who resigned rather than fire the special prosecutor during the Saturday Night Massacre? Elliot Richardson. And that concludes our latest blast through the 1970s, a decade where your species took one giant leap for mankind. Backward, in fashion sense. If you survived the trivia without tripping over your own bell-bottoms, give yourself a slow clap. If you didn't last very long, don't worry, neither did disco. Join me again for more brain-powered humiliation. Farewell, and a groovy goodbye, Earthbrains. Melvin, exiting! Still here? Impressive! You might just have enough brain cells left to handle another video. Click one. Prove me wrong.